Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's session. I'm really excited to have all the way from Geneva, somebody who's in the hospitality industry and a CEO who brings a lot of wealth of experience of traveling around the world, being in different cultures and different countries. And it's going to be very exciting. I find the whole hospitality area very interesting, particularly after what it's been through with the pandemic and how getting back from that, people are hungry to travel and to experience things and get out of those dark days. Without further ado, I will let our guest introduce himself.
Jonathan, thank you very much. Duncan O'Rourke, I'm the Chief CEO for Accor, running Middle East, Africa, India, and then Asia Pacific as well, so a large area. But very, very humbled and very honored to be on this podcast, Jonathan. I've watched many of your ones, and I'm very honored and humbled to be part of this.
Well, Duncan, it's a real pleasure having you on. And for our guest, it's the 39 brands, I think I'm right, 260,000 people in Accor. People won't know the major holding companies so much as they will know the sub-brands. Now, I'm just going to mention a few that I seem to remember, which is Ibis, Novotel, Sofitel, the Fairmont, just Raffles, Orient Express, Mandarin. Am I right? Are there other top brands?
Those are our top brands, correct. Accor has 40 brands in total. And so it's not only the traditional hotels, we also have restaurant companies, lifestyle companies as well. But the major brands and the iconic brands, clearly, Jonathan, as you mentioned, the Raffles, where there's a wonderful one about to open very soon in London at the Old War Office, where Churchill had his office during the times of that we're looking forward to. Orient Express, iconic with the trains, which we're doing, and then the Fairmont, Sofitels. And then on the, like you mentioned, on the economy, so we go through the 360. We have the Ibis hotels, we have the economies, we have the upper upscale, the traditional Swiss hotels, Bowman-Perks as well. So a really united international collection of different brands.
No, I mean, fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And I think it's interesting going, you're in Geneva now. We've got the lake behind you. It's a beautiful view there. Nice. And I went and did a talk at one of the finishing schools, which were preparing and sending people out to the different hotel chain. It's gone from my mind now, but it was up in the mountains in Switzerland, one of the final finishing schools for the whole hotel industry. It'll come to me later on. But seeing the seriousness and the professionalism that people take to lead those in the industry and to cope with the quite high churn that you have of people coming in and going out, it's a major operation to be running any one of the hotels or restaurants or health and well-being centers that you have. And I have a deep respect for that. So for you, how do you see things now that, okay, the pandemic's not over, it never will be, it'll always be with us, and you'll have to be ready for another virus maybe to hit, and how do you respond to that? But what do you think, how are you experiencing it? Are you seeing brighter days now, post-pandemic?
Yeah, look, I know this hotel business, this industry is very resilient. It always has been, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's been crisis. This pandemic was very different, Jonathan, because normally, from my experience, when something hit somewhere, it was more in a region or an area. This just hit us worldwide, and it really brought the entire hospitality industry to its knees. It was traumatic, but we've coming out of this. Signs are very good. Europe is picking up tremendously. Asia is still a little bit coming through, a little bit more because of China and the influence of that of those export markets coming in there. Middle East is doing extremely well. So it's not finished, but it's resilient. But the repercussions of that pandemic is still affecting us. And what you mentioned before about recruitment and staffing and getting people to come back into the industry is a challenge, and will continue to be a challenge. So it's keeping us busy, it's keeping us vigilant, it's keeping us focused. But it's a wonderful industry, and like I said, very resilient.
Yeah, no, very true. And you know, the topic of this podcast is, of course, inspiring leadership. And in the hotel industry, I know when I've been to, some really good hotels, I won't mention any of the rivals like the Conrad or anything like that, but when I've been staying at really nice hotels, I love meeting the manager of the hotel or whoever it is and talking to them and sharing the experiences that Lee and I have had and where there's been really good leadership. And you can absolutely tell where there's good, inspiring leaders who are managers and running it and caring for their people, that you get that experience as one of the hotel guests. What's your own view about inspiring leadership, and who would, I think you and I were talking about another leader in the Accor group that you find as a CEO is inspiring. Do you want to mention them and what to you inspiring leadership means?
Yeah, look, just in the beginning about this industry, what's fascinating and still fascinating to me is a general manager who's leading a hotel, be it the Savoy, be it the Carlton House, whatever hotel you're talking about. When you actually look at the education and the experience vis-a-vis what he's managing, 200, 300, 400 million assets, very few industries offer you this, and so that's a fantastic opportunity in doing that. But for me, it is about leadership. It is about inspiring leaders, but I believe it's something that you can't really train or learn. It's something you grow into. You really grow into that with the experience. It's a person. Inspiring leadership is a person having a mission. It's really a guiding principle for me, and a very specific way of how one approaches things, how one builds something for long-term value. And it's very much about values. I'm a very firm believer in values. Sometimes inspiring leadership means you have to take unpopular or difficult decisions, but you have to really always stay true to what you believe in. And I believe that when you do this, when you lead these people, it brings people around you who are growing in with you to grow and blossom and then to exceed their expectations. My region is huge. I don't manage anybody. I'm not managing a single person. I'm stretching, I'm guiding, I'm helping, but I don't really manage anybody. Nobody in my team needs to be managed by myself. They manage themselves and they do that very well. All I can do is coach them, support them, help them, and drive everybody at the same way.
Yeah, and that brings me to a point with many of the CEOs I've had the honor of working with, or other leaders at different levels, that the coach approach to leadership is really what works very well, that you empower them, you delegate to others, and in a way you almost become redundant because they are making the decisions. You're evaluating decisions once a month and checking on them, coaching and mentoring them, helping them grow and fly. But I love your approach, the coach approach, and that you don't micromanage people. You actually get out of their way and let them fly like eagles. Someone described it like eagles in a patch of sky. You let them have their area, not turkeys in a barn under the spotlights up to their knees in ammonia, with no room to move or breathe and your wings clipped. That's not how to lead people.
No.
Now, you've had a fascinating life journey. If I remember right in our conversation, grew up in South Africa, and then you came to boarding school at Bath. We both experienced boarding school, and that gave you some great experience. But would you tell us a bit about the life journey that you've had and which bits sort of shaped you into the successful leader and CEO you are today? Because I don't say that because you're here, just others have said that they find you inspiring. That's why you're here. It's a referral-only podcast. So you can't tell me you're inspiring and then appear on the show. It has to be others have found you. So it is always what the other experiences. It's like telling customers that you're a great hotel. If the customers don't experience that themselves, they will never come back. So what shaped you? Give us perhaps 5-10 minutes of your life story and some of the events that shaped you.
Look, Jonathan, you mentioned that I was born in South Africa, and then my parents moved, and I went to, because my parents were traveling consistently and moving, I was sent to a boarding school in Bath, in Prior Park College. So I went to boarding school from 11, did my A-levels there. Boarding school was very good to me. Boarding school, I believe, gave me a wonderful foundation to start with. And then the fact I believe that I traveled around the world each time your parents were living in different cultures, different places. I always embraced that, the local communities, the languages, the cuisines, the cultures. I've always embraced that and learned as many languages while I could doing that. And I've carried that on to my career. So I've always been, and maybe one of the best advices I ever got was from a gentleman from Joseph Epner, who was at Four Seasons, who said, "You young Duncan, don't stay in one place too long, just move and travel while you're young and learn." And so I went to Russia during when Gorbachev was there and Yeltsin came. I was in Russia at that time, and it was new for me. And I just traveled the world, learning languages, learning cultures. And I believe all of that has really given me a wonderful foundation to work at. And then at the same time, of course, I've been very, very blessed with my career, with being able to work with many, many very influential, very inspiring leaders at different companies. So I didn't stay in one company throughout my career. I moved. I looked where I was a little bit, in that sense, impatient. And so if I didn't think there was a promotion coming soon, then I moved to another company where it was coming, and made sure that I was positioned to be able to get there in those positions as well. And so that also has, all that advice has really helped me drive that through. But when I look back a little bit, I think really I've been very, very lucky. I've had wonderful people working for me, working with me. I've just been blessed. I had very, very clever people working with me. I've been able to work with fantastic people where I've learned from. And then, as I mentioned, I think the basis of the education I had, that boarding school, that sports, that camaraderie, that standing up for yourself, learning to communicate, learning to this, and then this wonderful choice of embracing different cultures and languages, and I can tell you, Jonathan, in this industry, that's a huge benefit. I think in life it's a benefit, but in this industry especially, that's a benefit.
Yeah, I can't agree more. And in a moment, I'd love you to tell me of, I think you mentioned another CEO in Accor who you find very inspiring. I'd like to know who that person was, and who knows, you might get them on the podcast themselves if you think they're very inspiring. But also, to balance it out in our life, we have some people who are not so inspiring. They are what I call expiring. They suck the life out of you, like if you remember Harry Potter and his Dementors, that your soul is taken out by these leaders. And sometimes you get psychopaths who work with you, and they like power and they like status. They become presidents of America, or they become prime ministers in the UK. And they're not good for you. So you don't need to mention any of those, but have you ever had experiences where colleagues or people working for you or people above you were what I'd call quite toxic?
Indeed. And before I go to that, who are you referring to, and who I was referring to, who's a fundamental different background, but super, super inspiring, is Mo Bailey, who is he's going to be the CEO for the entire Sofitel M Gallery and Emblems, and a completely different background. Moda's gone through probably one of the most prestigious educations one can get in France, not from the hotel business, but absolutely inspiring, and somebody you should speak to, and very different to who we're going to talk about. Now, I have, Jonathan, worked with people which are demotivating, which they suck your energy, which are insecure, and anybody who has some sort of talent is pushed to the side because of that insecurity. Dictatorship. I've worked with a couple of those, and that's also founded me in terms of, that's not what I want to do. That's not how I'm going to behave. That's not what I'm going to lead as well. And I think times changed that as well. Maybe that attitude or that dynamics was maybe more traditional in the sense that, listen, I started in the kitchens after hotel school in Switzerland. I started in the kitchens, and I can tell you, in the kitchens in those days in Switzerland and in Germany, it wasn't a piece of cake, and it was rough and tough, and If you deal like that now with people, you probably get taken into court or something. That was just par for the course there, and we were just young and gullible and scared and doing everything that we had to do to grow. And it's a good thing that's gone. That's absolutely gone. So I have worked with those, and they've influenced me. Logically, they have influenced me, but in the way that I never want to be like that.
Yeah. I do think everybody you meet has something to teach you if only you would listen. And from those people, you think, I'm not ever going to be like that. But you have to be streetwise, because otherwise those people will take you out, use you, and you'll actually get abused by them or misused by them, or they could even destroy your career. So well done for spotting those early. Let's talk about, and I'm pleased that you talked about the CEO of Sofitel there, Mobeli. What about if you were to pick one proudest, happiest moment and one darkest moment of your life or your work, and what you learned from each of those, from the proudest moment and from a tough moment? What would you share?
The proudest moment has been with my family, with my kids, and I must say I've been extremely blessed to have Marina, my wife, who supported me. She casually reminded me 3 months ago that we've moved 17 times, not in a positive way, that reminder, but more in a factual statement there. But that's also how this industry is. It's been extremely supporting, and of course with my family. I've also achieved wonderful milestones. Again, I've been, Jonathan, very lucky. I was the youngest CEO in the industry. I was the youngest F&B director. I was the youngest general manager in a 5-star hotel. So I've been very, very lucky in my career, and very, 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 very blessed that way. I've always thought it's important. It's easy to say that, but it's always important to stay humble, not forget where you come from, not forget what's happening, and you're just a custodian of the position you have. Things, especially nowadays, it can change in an instant. Yeah. And so I never ever thought I was bigger than that position, or I deserve that position. I'm just there. I'm blessed to be there for this time to do this, but I'm always very conscious things can change very, very quickly there.
Yeah, and I just wanted to pick up on that point. I think it's such a good one that you make. And this is back to the legacy bit that we're going to talk about at the very end as part of what makes high-performing leaders and teams. And this is what my wife and I, with the Inspiring Leadership Compass and the questions we're going to be asking you, we found that those really inspiring leaders are focused on leaving a legacy, there's stewardship, leaving things better than you found them, that you never own them. But like actually our children. I mean, you've got your children. I've got my own 2 children and my 2 stepchildren that Lee brought to our marriage. And I don't own them. I mean, they're now 27 to 30. I just looked after them as they passed through our lives. And I hope that by being a good father and a stepfather, they'll want to come back and see us again. And we've now got grandchildren, which is a real joy. But I do think this is a really important point, learning from these proudest moments. And I'm also caught by, you like me have been very driven to, I was, one of the youngest company commanders in the army, and, got promotion early. But actually, there can be a cost of our intensity. And I know whatever I do, I'm going to be intense about it. My wife, Lee, is very long suffering and goes, are you being a bit intense? And I go, well, I might be a little bit, So I'll get something like this Aura ring, which I'm wearing, which I'm not sponsored by them, I'll quickly add. I'll be wearing it, measuring all my data of what comes on and then trying to improve it all. And so what's your experience? And by the way, I remembered the name of the Swiss finishing school. I wonder if you've heard of it or your listeners have. Les Roches up in...
Yeah, absolutely. You have Les Roches, Lyon, Lausanne, and César Ritz. These are the 4 big...
Yeah, it was amazing. My wife and I went there a few times to speak and to run some courses as keynote speakers, and I loved the place. And it was really impressive to see the effort and the attention to detail and the skills they have to learn. Very impressive. But back to you about sort of proudest moments and darkest moments. So that was a proud moment. What about a dark moment, and what did you learn from things when it didn't kind of work out as you'd hoped? It might not be big, it might be pretty average, but there must be something you've learned when it didn't go as you planned, because you've all these plans to do better.
Yeah, I've had many, Jonathan. I've had many. I wouldn't call them dark, but things where it didn't work out properly, and I've learned and have taken the memories and the lessons on the learnings away. And that can be, you know, this industry is about people, and you hire people, and you fully believe you have the right person in the right place, and you can get it spectacularly wrong in terms of hiring people and putting them in senior positions, and it really doesn't go well. And you try to learn, and what did I do wrong? What could I have seen? What, you know, it's very challenging. I've opened hotels. I've opened many hotels as a GM during my time, where, you know, you have one vision and one goal, and then because of timing, because of cost, because of all these other influences, it doesn't go well. You know, and you're laying in bed. You know, you're laying in bed. People always think, well, did you worry? So I was worried sick. I was laying in bed. I couldn't sleep. You know, the pressure and the immense of going on, making sure that you want to get something right. You know, it hasn't been all easy for me, I can tell you. And I've made tremendous mistakes as well. Good things I've learned from them, but I've made mistakes in recruiting, in positioning, in timings, many, I can tell you, many mistakes.
So let me ask you a question I asked some of the other CEOs, and you don't have to be specific, so you're not exposing yourself, but when was the last time you personally were wrong? Just tell me in time frame. When was the last time you personally were wrong?
Last week.
Okay, good answer. How quickly did you realize you were wrong?
I actually realize these things much quicker now than before.
How long? I mean, like hours or days?
Well, in this particular example, it's a matter of 2-3 days.
Okay.
And it's about somebody as well.
Yeah.
And I immediately called back and said, look, I got it totally wrong. You were right. I was completely wrong, and I should have listened. And you know, I have to learn from this.
Lovely. That was my third question, was how quickly did you resolve it, and did you apologize to the people who got it wrong? So that is, for me, very healthy. But I've come across a number of very senior leaders, and sometimes, I hate to say it, in the military where I was, when I asked them when was the last time you were dead wrong, and they went, let me think about this. Could have been 1981, but it wasn't really my fault. It was their fault. You know, that they don't see that they can be human, and they have fault, that they think they are perfect, and nobody can coach them. No one can give them advice. They're not listening. Do you know who I am? I've got here. I'm the boss. Do it my way or the highway. Have you ever come across a boss like that? You don't need to mention anybody. But
I have indeed, many of them. I do things a little bit differently here. With my team, you know, we celebrate successes, and we have many. But I can tell you as well, Jonathan, we celebrate failures. We are transparent with the failures, and we celebrate them. And so it's encouraging when a team says, listen, we tried this, or somebody in my team said, I tried this, it didn't work. And he's very open about it, and we celebrate that. And we encourage that, because if you don't make mistakes, you're not moving. And so I encourage that. But I have worked with people where it's frowned upon, and people are nervous and then hiding things. It's not for me that. I think we have to all be transparent. We celebrate success as much as we celebrate failures. And you'll see, you know, when people work with my teams, they notice that and feel that nobody's scared to take a risk, to do something, because they have that belief that there's a support behind them, and we can drive it forward.
Yeah, there's that lovely story. When I was in IBM, John Watson was the legendary CEO many years before, and he'd just taken over as CEO. And on day 2, one of his vice presidents came to see him. And he said, look, I've got this problem, and I don't quite know what to do about it. And he said, did you tell the previous CEO? And he said, no, it wasn't safe to do that. I said, what do you mean? He said, failure was not an option. It was always good news. So I couldn't tell him. He said, how long have you been struggling with this problem? He said, 6 months. Yeah. He said, what does it cost us? He said, $650,000. Now, that was a lot in those days. It's a lot more today. And he said, so I suppose you're going to fire me. And John Watson said, fire you? Why would I fire you? I've just invested $650,000 in your development. I want you to go away and think about it with your team and come back tomorrow with the solution.
Oh, wonderful.
So the guy went away, he came back with a solution. John said, crack on, do it. He made $5 million from the improvements that they'd found to it, and he became the CEO 10 years later.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
It's a teachable moment. We talk about this being a teachable moment. What have you learned? What are you going to do differently? Learning action all the time. And General Colin Powell, his book, It Worked for Me in Leadership and Life. He lived next door to my my parents-in-law, and they got to know each other. They lived in each other's houses, and he was a great leader. But he, in his book, talked about after action reviews, which is what we in the military use, that every time you have an event, went well or went badly, you do an after action review. What have we learned? What are we going to do differently? Talking about learning, if you went back to see the young Duncan O'Rourke, age 16, at boarding school in Bath, and you met in a time machine, what advice would you give yourself and to other 16 to 18-year-olds at this stage? This matters, don't worry about that, from your experience.
Look, I was very focused. Boarding school where I was competitive, and in sports, in everything. You were always very, very competitive, and you always wanted to be. And I think that served me well. It hasn't worked with every single student who went to that school, but it helped me and served me well. I think if I look back at 16, I was very focused on going one way. And I would probably, because actually I did not, I was focused on one, I actually wanted to become a lawyer and really focus on one drive and just following a family driven goal and strategy. And I think to be broader, to be more open, to be more acceptable, and maybe not to take at that stage things that seriously in terms of competitive. I think I would do that. It's taken me a while, but I've adjusted from that. But then again, when I look back on it, it has served me well. It has served me well, and so I have to embrace that side of it as well. But I think just in general, be more open. Don't take it that seriously. Not to say that I didn't take things super serious. I mean, I can, just spend hours talking how much trouble I got at school and at home and all that. So it wasn't that I was taking everything seriously, but no. I think just to embrace and be more broader in one's view would be more important.
Okay, that's lovely. You're going to have to give us one thing you got in trouble with at home or school. Come on, there must be some story.
Well, you can imagine the boarding school. The list is so long and distinguished from waking up on Fridays. We never pretended we were asleep to wake up and go and drink when we were 15 and 16. They get caught. I mean, I must say we had the Christian brothers at the school there,
Yeah.
and I can tell you they were on top of everything. They knew everything and caught everything very, very quickly there. But it was many of those things, sleeping out, drinking, those sort of things that one was got in trouble with at these boarding schools.
Well, you've done very well to survive.
When I was at boarding school, everybody was smoking from 14 to 16, and then once you became in upper 6 and lower 6, you were allowed to smoke because that was the law in England at that age then. And so in my class in lower 5, we had 85-90% of people were smoking. And the minute you were allowed, you went down to like 3% because everybody.
It is interesting, isn't it? What we can't have, we desperately want, and what we're allowed to have, we take for granted. Let's go around the Inspiring Leadership Compass, sort of quick fire questions. Moral quotient, MQ, there's a true north at the top of the compass. What makes you authentic? What if there's top 3 values you live by, briefly, what are they? And what do you do when you let them slip to get back on track and onto true north?
Look, first of all, I really believe in the true north because it gives you a sense of purpose. If you don't have that, you drift. And so you're absolutely right. You've got to always come back. My fundamental values are honesty, integrity and straightforwardness. I believe in that, and I think one always should be very honest, have all the integrity that you can have, and be very straightforward. If things are going well, say they're going well. If they're not going well, be very transparent and people know where they stand there. That's easier said than done, Jonathan, as you can imagine, because you have different times and different periods where you may not want to be, but you always, when you reflect back onto these values you always have to go back and be very straightforward, very honest, and have a lot of integrity. Because, what do? I deal with owners of hotels, I deal with guests of the hotels, I deal with the shareholders of the company and the employees and my team. And so it's a relationship business. You spend a lot of time in managing these different relationships. And I think if you get those three consistently all the time right, it's important. And one does slip. And it's just human nature, but you have to go back, because like I said, otherwise you drift and you don't really have that sense of purpose then.
Yeah, it's so very true. I remember when doing a Cyprus double mountain marathon, I thought I'd take an easy option by following another team, Royal Marines. They were super fit. And I thought, they know where they're going. I'll put my map in my pocket and not worry about navigating. I'll just follow them. But they got terribly lost. And we ended up in a gully and we couldn't get out. We had to back out. And on the back of his jacket, he had a little badge and it said, "Don't follow me. I'm lost too. Don't follow me. I'm lost too." And I thought, I'll never forget that. I've now got to do my thing, go by my bearings. And it was my father, who was a naval officer. And my brother was telling me that father said during the Second World War, too many ships got hit by mines. So they were just following the other ships. And the first ship hit a mine and the other one was blindly following and not making their own decisions about the right route. And so I think it's important we have our moral integrity, our true north, and our values. And it's different for everybody. Purpose is the next one, PQ. What gives your life meaning and purpose, Duncan? And what's your calling, your vocation?
Look, I think, first of all, just about this industry, my purpose, I wouldn't, when you asked me that 6, I was just thinking when we were talking again, I wouldn't change anything in terms of entering this industry. Mm-hmm. Even if someone said, well, you can do this, I wouldn't change anything. I'm very blessed because I love this industry. It's been very good to me. I've been able to influence and touch many people in this industry. I've never forgotten, as you move up, you pull up. And so one thing I'm extremely proud is how many people have worked with me and are now in very, very senior positions around the world and within Accor as well now. That's been very, very important for me. And I keep using that word lucky. I'm lucky with the people around me who work with me, and I've just been very lucky in this industry. And that gives me purpose. Jonathan, I love this thing. I love going to work. I wake up happy every day. I don't have a day where I don't know, why am I in this? It just doesn't, it's never, I'm very, very fortunate. I have many, many friends who were in the hotel industry, who were poached very quickly into other industries, and they're not as happy as they could have been. I mean, it's not an easy industry, it's in the beginning, it's long hours, holidays, hours, low pay. But if you drive through that and get through that, it's a very rewarding industry. So that's the purpose. I'm blessing for the people around me.
Yeah, no, it's lovely to hear that. And you are right. I mean, I love the work I do, coaching CEOs and executive teams around the world, and having interesting people on the podcast. It's a real gift, and it's my way. I don't make any money from it, but it's my way of giving back, sending the elevator back down so that others listening around the world can learn from leaders like you on what worked for you. Now, it might not work for everybody, but it worked for you, and they can pick out the best bits that might apply for them while still keeping themselves authentic to who they are, rather than trying to be a poor image of somebody else. But there's often good tips that people pick up. So I'm really pleased you found that, because you're right. Many people, and it's not the inspiring leaders I meet, but the ones who are mulling along, not sure what they're doing, lost their sense of direction, they're not happy in what they do. And there's that old saying that success is getting what you want, But happiness is wanting what you already have, and happiness is being at choice, that you have choice and you decide what you're going to do. Well, I'm really pleased on that. Health is the next thing. Clearly, in the Accor group, health is a big part of what you want your customers to experience, but also for your hotel staff and the managers. You don't want them working in a psychologically unsafe environment where their mental health is affected. They're being shouted at and bullied at like you used to be in the hotel kitchens when you were working there. And I, in the army, had people shouting and screaming at me, sergeant majors. They have to be nice to people now. Please, madam, would you mind attacking towards the enemy? You know, if it's all right with you, and I know it's not a good day for you, but if you feel like, no, I'm teasing slightly, but it's not too far of it. What have you done to look after, you know, you're a busy man, your personal health and your mental health? What tips would you give to other leaders listening around the world?
Look, what Jonathan, what I do, it's not enough. So I try to look after what you eat and what you drink, but I can tell you in this industry, that's just an absolute nightmare, because you traveling, you meeting owners, you meeting investors, you meeting government officials. These are all at lovely hotels, and the chefs are there and the sommeliers are there, and they all want to show what they can do. And so it's, you know, on the plane, it's very easy. Well, I'm just going to have a soup, you know, and then when you land, you know, it's an 8-course meal and you love it and you're having a wonderful time. But I think it's important. What I do is I go for 2 weeks every single year. I go away for 2 weeks to a retreat in Germany. Where it's for your mind, your soul, your body. And what happens there is you meditate, you reflect, and you detox all of that. You detox your mind, your soul, your body. And when I say detox, there's a course on there where you fast for 10 days. You only have waters and soups, consommé soups and teas. You go to yoga, you meet with yoga specialists, you go on walks, you switch off your phones. I go there alone. I don't go there with a family or anywhere. I go there totally alone for 2 weeks. It's actually on Lake Constance, overlooking the Tegernsee, the Lake Constance in Germany. Stunning. And really, when I come out of there, I'm full of energy again. And I highly recommend that everybody, in my opinion, needs to step away for 2 weeks and do something like that.
Well, you made me smile. I'm really pleased you do that, because I'd love to find a place like that, and you recommend it. So after this, we'll have a chat and I'll find out about that. But it's interesting, while you were on one side of Lake Constance, many years ago, I was on the other side doing the long-range recce patrol course with NATO troops, being trained by the SAS in survival and escape and evasion. And we were living a pretty rough time, I can tell you. But yeah, it wasn't quite as good as you, but I think our food was about as skimpy as yours was. And we were on the run being hunted by a hunter force. So that made me smile about Lake Constance. And that's so good for both mental health and physical health. Anything more you'd add about mental health? Because particularly in your industry, many industries, your staff are suffering from mental health issues, particularly having been through the pandemic. That's had a huge impact on people. You know, are they going to lose their jobs? Will the industry come back? What's your tip about getting people's mental health back together?
Look, it's so important. We call in our core, we don't call them employees, we call them heartists. So they are from their heart, and they artists of what they're doing. And one of the important things is when you work somewhere, you have to really be in tune with the values of the company, or they have to, your values have to be very much aligned with the company. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Accor started a Heartist Foundation, where our president, Sebastian Bazin, convinced the board not to take a dividend and put over 50 million euros into a fund where we helped employees, artists throughout the world, be it pandemic, be it an earthquake, be it now in Ukraine with refugees coming across and employees coming across. So we do a tremendous amount of helping them adapt in that, as well as you can imagine, and a prime example would be the Ukrainian employees that we have coming across into Poland, that mentally and helping them, as well as the Polish families there. But it's not only about Ukraine, Poland. This happens in any country with earthquakes, with natural disasters, economic disasters. We take it very, very seriously and provide that. It is so important. And as well as Jonathan, during the pandemic, people sitting at home for 4, 5, 6 months, that takes a toll on them, and they're not used to it. And there's different dynamics at play at the house. So we've taken that very, very seriously. And like I said, this foundation with the shareholders and the funds that we do that, it's very important for me to work in a company where those values are very much aligned. And I'm very proud to be with Accor in that essence.
I really love what Accor have done there. And I will remember that always, not just called an employee, but called a heartist, not an artist, but it's a heart. And I do think that takes us nicely on to EQ, which is the next component of what makes inspiring leaders and teams, which is about your emotional and social intelligence. And particularly as heartists, you have to really connect with colleagues and with your guests so that they feel and they know that you genuinely care about them rather than going through the motion. What would be your top tip that you've learned over all these years, from being at boarding school to being in the kitchens and being shouted at and running around like a mad thing to various jobs? What's been your top tip about developing good rapport with people? What do you do?
Look, I think it's so important, this emotional intelligence, because it's all about communicating and getting people around you to perform tasks at a higher level. You mentioned Conrad and all the other companies. We all have hotel rooms and we all have the same bit, but how can we make ours better? And that's the only way to win is via the people. So I think learning to listen. It took me a while, coming from a boarding school and being quite influential at the boarding school. I didn't really listen that much. Another thing from coming back from 16, what I would do differently is listen a lot more. I think listening is very important. Embracing the situation, understanding the situation is important, and connecting on a very non-arrogant hierarchical way. Everybody calls me Duncan in my office, in the hotels, in the teams. I'm available. I make myself available. I once learned very quickly, working when I was asked, well, how much is your payroll? I said, the payroll's around 60%. He said, well, how much time do you spend with the payroll? And I said, well, about 10-15%. He said, well, that's 50% too less. If it's 60, spend 60%. That's your biggest expense. Spend most of the time. And so I learned that then very quickly. And it's so important to listen, to grow, and to give an opportunity for people. It really, you need to adapt, and you have to be aware, because things change. It's not only about social intelligence now, but you have new generations, you have millennials, you have the Y, the Z. They have to be communicated, embraced in a different way. And so you have to always at the same time surround yourself with fresh, young ideas as well. And so that's very important in that essence for me.
Yeah, and other CEOs that I work with, if they haven't, I always encourage them to have reverse mentoring. So they pick some younger members that they're a mentor to, but they get reverse mentoring, and the young person in their 20s comes and sits on their board. There's certain agreements about confidentiality, but afterwards the CEO gets feedback from that young person on how they came across, how they lived the values, and what ideas they had about how they could do things differently. And they point out, I noticed when you said this, Michael, that one of your vice presidents completely shut down. You'd insulted them, and they never said anything else throughout that meeting. Did you notice that? No, I didn't notice that. And so young people can we always remember as children, from the mouths of babes. I mean, I remember my young daughters teaching me about emotional intelligence. That is fantastic, which takes me nicely onto something which is closely linked to this, from EQ to what I call CQ, cultural intelligence quotient, cognitive and collaborative, teams, and also that diversity that you've talked about by your world travel, different languages that you speak. But what's your top tip on making people feel included rather than excluded from different nations and different backgrounds and different orientations? What's your top tip?
I think when you create the team, when you create your team, be diverse in who you have in terms of abilities, in terms of cultures, in terms of diversification. Don't cookie cut and have 15 people or 10 people exactly the same. I don't do that. I have mavericks in the team. I have highly intellectual people, academic people, operations people. Have a nice mix of male and female in the teams, and be diverse in terms not only of male and female, but in terms of cultures, in terms of languages, and in terms of nationalities. It's more challenging when you start because you form that team and there's obviously then friction and all that. But I can tell you, once you gel that and once that team comes together, it really becomes a high performing a strength that you have there, and that's so important. So my advice would be to embrace. Don't always look. Spend a lot of time when you make the teams, when you create and when you have people around you. Spend a lot of time making sure that you have different skill sets, characters, and embracements in the team. There, it's so rewarding.
Yeah,
it's absolutely true.
Love it, and completely concur with that one. From that to resilience, RQ. Resilience in adverse situations. Clearly, as you've discussed already, many things never quite worked out as you thought they would do. And what have you learned about picking yourself up when things haven't worked out that you'd give as a tip to other people? This is what works for you, and others might find it helpful.
Yeah, I started young, and I don't know if it's the boarding school, my character, but I started young with, I didn't like to lose. We were all in team sports, and, it was frowned upon in the first 15 if you walked in and you lost. You were not looked at kindly at the school already for the next 4 days. And so winning was everything. I moved that through. And obviously, as you went through the career, and as I've gone through the career, it hasn't always, you don't always win, you lose in terms of recruiting. You both go after somebody, or a top team member moves to another team and or another entity or another organization. That can be disheartening in the beginning because you've done so much to bring, and then why they're leaving me, and you take it personally, and there's no need to do that. You just actually embrace it and encourage them. And also in setbacks in terms of goals, I set difficult, challenging goals for me and my team, and I haven't always reached them. And when I was younger, it annoyed me and upset me. And I'm more realistic now. I still set very high goals. I still set very challenging targets and stretch everybody. And if I don't make them for whatever reason, I take ownership of that. I address why I haven't reached them, and we keep going forward. So the resilience is very, very important, to pick yourself up. Don't take it personally. Don't take things too personally. Just keep going away. I don't take it personally anymore, and I don't hold anybody personal in the team. We discuss that. There are, of course, reasons why, and people need to take ownership. I mean, that's important in a team. They need to take ownership, but I don't take things personally anymore. And with this world now, Jonathan, everything is so unexpected. I can tell you the amount of time I spent in when I was previously in Northern Europe preparing budgets and spending hours and months in details, only for COVID to come and blow everything for the next 1.5 years out the window. Every strategy gone out the window, everything gone out the window. It can be disheartening. Hotels that are opening, hotels that you lose, teams. You don't take it personally. You just have to really be able to pick yourself off the ground and get up, because your team feels that. People around you feel that. You get up very quickly and you move on very quickly. And that's very, very important.
I love that. And it comes across with real passion, and that whole experience of COVID really taught us all to be incredibly resilient or crumble. And takes me on nicely to brand, BQ, the penultimate one. you're in the brand of brands. Accor's got all these great brands, but what about your brand? My question is, do you have your own coach, and have they got 360 feedback for you? And do you learn from what they've learned about you?
Look, I think it's very important. I don't only have one coach. I have 2 or 3 different coaches, and I think it's always good once in a while to change a coach, not always keep the same. I think feedback is imperative. I think honest, transparent feedback is very important to discuss. How did you do something? What is the challenge? How did you react? Why? I do that a lot. You mentioned having the younger generation on team. I have that. We have an executive committee where they sit on, and it's not always pleasant, their feedback, but it's important in that essence there. But I think honest feedback and trying to always improve, trying to always make things better and leave things better. I can honestly say, everywhere I've gone, I can honestly say that I have left the place and the people, the teams there, in a better situation than when they were. It hasn't always happened immediately. Sometimes it goes very quickly, and sometimes you think it's going and then it drops and you have to come back and pick up. But in generally, I could say that is my brand. I'm very connected, but I think it's very important to be coached, especially when and let's not kid ourselves. At my level, it's you need it's not everybody's going to tell you what you're doing wrong, and you get a lot of positive feedback. That's kinesthetic. It's normal. And if you're not careful, that can go to your head. And I don't allow that. I have coaches, and I do change. I have one, but I change other ones because they look at you completely differently, and they're not used to what you said before, and they give you different input. And I think that's very, very important. And of course, the biggest sound check you have is when you come home, because you used to no decision being questioned and everything going very quickly, and you come home and then you get a real quick reality check from Marina, like that. Again, I don't work for you, and it's not happening like this. So it goes really, really quick, and that's important as well. And on a personal level, that's important as well. But I do think my advice would be for people in leadership always, and if you can, not in your industry, get some mentorship or some coaching or from some leadership from people outside your industry who can be transparent with you, honest with you, and and also encourage them to meet your teams and see the different challenges and aspects in that as well. So I'm a very firm believer in that. Yeah,
I'm so pleased to hear that. The best, just like in tennis, 100% of all the top tennis players have coaches. No one. Why would you not? And I think people have got over the thing that what's wrong with you if you've got a coach? Is there a problem? No, they go. Best performers have someone always there who's going to tell them the truth and challenge them. And you've answered the question about legacy, which is leaving things better than you found them. So I'll go on to executive teams or top teams that you've led. What have you done, if you to give one tip, what have you done to turn around a average or even a toxic team with maybe because of one individual into a high performing team? What did you do?
There's no standard solution. I don't think there's ever been a cookie cut for me, but I'm very proud to have a reputation for making unusual moves in those teams I create. I have the ability to free myself completely from expectations or prejudice from other people there. I look at the people for their capabilities. I think strong teams are very important. I surround myself, 80% of the people in my team, Jonathan, are better than I am. I can tell you that now. They make me look good. They make, I'm very blessed like that. They are highly, highly qualified. They're very, very good people. But teams are never going to be perfect from day one. And you have to grow with them, guide them, and lead them there. And when you have toxic, and you will find that you need to make difficult decisions. Because if you have to take everybody on a vision and show them, but if it continues to stay toxic, you need to make unpleasant decisions in rectifying that. Otherwise, it affects our whole team. And so It's not always pleasant, but you need to make challenging decisions sometimes as well. And that I can do. I have made. I take no pleasure in that. It's probably the worst thing you can do in our industry is to let unfortunate people go. But sometimes for where you want to go and what you want to do, it has to be done. And I've always said, you make the decision here and you implement here. And that's what I've done throughout my career.
Yeah, I do love that. And it reminds me of another CEO who said, when I was in a situation as a managing director, and he was one of my clients, but he was almost like reverse mentoring me. And he said, what is it you know about this person now? You know it already, but you're going to find it out in 6 months' time because you're delaying making a decision about them. I said, I know already they're not going to make it. So he said, why are you delaying the difficult decision? Because it's not going to get easier. It's going to get more difficult. So be firm in the decision, be kind in the execution of it. And as you say, head and heart and gut and wallet, head, heart, gut, wallet.
And you need to use all of them, right? You have to use all of them. I remember working for in Kempinski with Reto Witwer, who was the president, and he was asked once, Reto, you've let go of a lot of people. Do you have any regrets? And he said, absolutely. It was always too late.
Yes. Oh, that's such a good saying. It is often, it's always too late. And we just think things will get better if we just avoid the decision, but often it never does.
Also embracing the fact that maybe it's not working with me, and people who we've had these unpleasant conversations, they've gone on to different structures, organizations, and blossomed. So it's also good as well for both sides. It's not that you think, well, if it doesn't work with me, it's no good at all, or they no good. No, maybe also where I'm going and what I'm trying is not for them. But you need to have those decisions. You're absolutely right in what you said and what I said with the gut is also important.
Yeah, well, it reminded when I was in the jungles in Borneo with a mad captain in the SAS who was training a group of about 15 of us who were at the military academy. He was our instructor, and we had a very good non-commissioned officer with great wisdom. And a situation arose, and I'd been mulling it over for a long time. And he said, hey, listen to this, sir. He said, it's like you've got a cut and you don't tell me about it. We're here in the jungle with all the disease and infections. And if you keep quiet about it, in 2 days' time, the only thing I can do is saw off the limb because it's gone gangrenous. Yeah. But if you tell me earlier, I can apply various medicines to it and things, and we can heal it. And I can put a plaster, and it's very easy early. But you leave it too late, the only thing is I'm going to saw off the soggy end. I mean, it's a bit blunt, but it's this bit point like this that right. People don't need you to tell them exactly what to do. But if they've got a big problem, like the John Watson example, don't sit on it for 6 months. Start to say, this is my problem and this is what I'm going to do about it.
Correct.
Final 2 questions. Favorite book, and then I'll ask you to introduce yourself for the 2-minute top leadership tip. What's a favorite book for you on leadership that you've read recently, and why would you recommend it to everybody listening?
Look, it's going to sound a little bit because it's from the hotel business, but Horst Schultz, who was the former Ritz-Carlton president, an absolutely icon in our industry. He wrote a book out called Excellent Wins. I highly recommend people read that. It's a really passionate proponent of some of the employees' ideas where we're including the employees to take control over design of their own work, that frontline people, associates, artists often know better than we do with their managers what has to be done, and really empowering these employees can really make this customer service, specifically in the hospitality, but I believe in all industries, at a very high level. And he was at that time at the forefront of that, where Ritz-Carlton, a guest would stay at the hotel and be there 5 nights and have a €3,000 bill. And, the doorman, as he was leaving to go out for the day, would say, "How's any?" He would complain. And the doorman had the authority to compliment or to take off 2 nights off his bill, a doorman. Didn't even have to go to the GM, just listen, done. And so that book explains that. I knew about those stories, but the book goes into tremendous detail of how and why, the repercussions of that and what it does. So a very, very interesting read. And like I said, not only for the hotel business or the hospitality business, but all in general. And John, you know that, and I know that a lot of the times the people in the front line, the employees, and that they have the much quicker, better answer than we would ever have. And so to give that place where they're empowered to make those decisions and drive that forward is imperative.
So true. I love that, and excellent wins. I'm gonna look that one up. I hope they do an audio version because I'm dyslexic. So for me, listening to audiobooks, I listen to hundreds of different books, and that's going to be one of them. Okay. Would you finally introduce yourself, the role, who you are, your role, and your 2-minute top leadership tip? And that's what we'll end with.
Well, with pleasure. Good afternoon, Duncan O'Rourke. I'm the CEO for Accor, and I run the region of Middle East, Africa, India, and then the Asia Pacific. So a vast vary. Accor is 40 brands, 40 hospitality brands worldwide, and I've been with the company around 6 years. My biggest tips, and I've been in this industry for many years, my biggest tips would be, and advice would be, specifically as you're growing up, when you are being promoted, when you step up, pull people up with you. That's one of the biggest tips I've had. Don't have a mind frame of just growing yourself. Bring people up with you. It's very, very important, and I've done that throughout my career. The other things which are very important for me are be very true to yourself. Don't do things that are against your character. Don't do anything that is completely opposite to what you believe in. So your values are very important, and make sure you work and surround yourself in an organization where those values are respected.
Fantastic. Great advice. And Duncan O'Rourke, thank you very much indeed. You've brought some great wisdom to everybody around the world, and I wish you every success in satisfying the owners, the stakeholders, and your customers, as well as your hearters. So thank you very much for being on the Inspiring Leadership podcast.
Jonathan, thank you very, very much. And again, it's been an absolute honor. Thank you.